Welcome back to Couture Construction. I'm your host, Andrew Denny, and you're listening to Season 12, The Long Game. This season, we're asking what endures, not just in the homes we build, but in the choices behind them. The materials that age with grace, the spaces that continue to feel relevant long after trends fade. Luxury is changing, less excess, and more intention. Today's guest understands that shift deeply. Marie Flanigan is a classically trained architect and the founder of Marie Flanigan Interiors, the nationally recognized design firm known for creating timeless, deeply livable homes across the U.S. With a holistic approach that seamlessly unites architecture and interiors, her work is distinguished by sophisticated palettes, layered textures, and a refined use of natural light that brings warmth and elegance to every space. Her work has been featured in publications including Architectural Digest and Elle Decor, and her thoughtful approach to design extends beyond interiors into product collaborations with Visual Comfort, Annie Selke, and Mirror Home, all reflecting a commitment to craftsmanship and timeless design. Marie is also the author of The Beauty of Home and The Perfect Room, Timeless Designs for Intentional Living, two titles that perfectly capture the heart of today's conversation. This conversation is about natural materials, craft heritage, and the growing desire for homes that feel grounded instead of performative. We talk about sustainability without sacrifice, the relationship between architecture and furnishings, and why restraint is often the hardest thing to achieve in design. Homes that last are rarely the loudest ones. Marie, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Share a little, obviously an acclaimed designer, your work is all over the country, but share with us, who is Marie outside of design?
Well, I am first and foremost a wife and mother to three little kids. I've got a 12-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So between, running Marie Flanigan Interiors, where I've got 18 incredible women on my team, and life at home, life is never dull.
Yeah, I bet. And you're based out of the Houston area, correct? Have you been there your whole life, or?
Yeah, I went to Texas A&M and studied architecture, and my husband and I got married quickly right after college. So I've actually been here for over 20 years.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you're about to get into the heat of summer. So
we always try to escape for August somewhere, but the summer's no joke. But, Houston is an incredible design scene, and we've got people who move here from all over the country. So we've just got such an incredible mix of styles and aesthetics that kind of keeps our industry exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's start with today's discussion topics. And there's been a noticeable shift in how people define luxury, less spectacle, more warmth than authenticity. I think your work really, really reflects that. Can you kind of share just what's, kind of the basis of this shift?
I would say, people are looking for luxury in a little bit quieter way than maybe they were looking back in the day. It's less about excess and kind of as a means to kind of like show your wealth. And it's more about intentionality. People are looking for, a more personal touch to their home. They want their homes to be like restorative. I would say that the restraint aspect, people are pulling back, and we kind of live in this overstimulated, oversaturated world. And so I see a lot of people wanting livability in their home, and they want to be able to enjoy it and feel relaxed and not worry when, they have friends over drinking red wine, and they want durable, sustainable, long materials for the long game.
So there's definitely an emotional component to that for our clients. They want basically an escape from the busy world and scene. And when I open design magazines, or for instance, I'm a big fan of yours, and I look at your work, you're using a ton of organic material that just feels really cohesive but super warm and very, very just sustaining. What drew you to that? Was it the same emotion from your clients, or is that just kind of your natural bent?
I would say it's my natural bent, but in some ways I would say it's everybody's, because, we're all drawn to nature. The most timeless thing in the world, it can be nature. And bringing in those natural materials into our homes is just an extension of the beautiful world around us. And I would say that is a driving force in all my projects, is bringing in that warmth, that permanence, that honesty of the natural materials, whether it's stone, wood, plaster, materials that age beautifully and bring in that depth into their home. And if I can avoid a sheetrock wall, I will.
I'm with you. I want to talk for a moment too about just team and what it takes to pull this off. You do projects all over the country. And obviously you mentioned you have a staff of very talented women that you work with. You're based out of Houston. If you're doing a project on the East Coast, you obviously have your Texas roots and sensibility. But how do you make everything work, both logistically and from just a team perspective, sourcing materials? It's got to be a big production.
Absolutely. But I run my interiors firm in a very architectural way. We believe in, drawing right into the architect's drawings. We do a lot of drafting, a lot of spreadsheets. So much of a designer's role is communication and knowing how to communicate effectively. So as long as we have a strong team of architect, interior designer, builder, it actually makes it relatively easy to work all over the country. And, we still have weekly meetings. We're still communicating. And it's really about making sure everybody's kind of doing their role in a really efficient, beautiful way. And that's kind of where magic can happen within a team, is that we're all kind of gaining steam from each other and making the project better by being open to each other's ideas. But beyond that, our craftsmen, our vendors are an extension beyond just my in-house team of 18 women. We work with some of the most talented vendors and craftsmen, and we a lot of times take them with us. I mean, we're lucky to be in Houston, where we have such wonderful artisans, and often when we're building in, X, Y, and Z areas around the country, sometimes, especially if it's a vacation destination, they don't always have as many craftsmen in the area. So a lot of times we just bring our team with us because we believe in them. We know they make the project better, and we've worked with them for 20 years and they know what we want.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And we have actually found the same thing, especially when you go to these coastal communities or the mountains and the Rockies. People are very thirsty for labor. There's a huge labor shortage.
Yeah.
And what you find is in those communities, there's the top 5% that are capable of pulling off what needs to be pulling off, but they're committed for years. So you have to bring people in.
Being committed for years often equals really high prices.
Yes.
So
yes.
Although it sounds scary to bring in, a cabinetry team or whatever, often it can be competitive with what you would have paid locally anyways.
That's exactly right. So just going back to the design aspect, you do have the quote unquote luxury of being exposed to different geographical areas, and the materials you use, with them being organic, I would assume sometimes they're somewhat native to the regions you are designing in. What are some surprises you have found where, again, maybe you're doing something in the Rockies or something on the coast that you found a new organic material that you just really kind of fell in love with?
I mean, gosh, I have so many stories about that, because that is one of my personal passions, is just beautiful, innovative materials. I mean, I could talk so much about even just the fun we're having with different wood grains that we're loving using right now, all the way to, you and I were chatting before the show about working in Kiowa, and in that area, they're known for tabby and kind of beautiful shell embedded concrete. And when we were kind of doing design development on a project out there, we were experimenting with ways to bring that material even on the interiors. And that's kind of what I do often, is kind of lean into what the architect's vision is and how can we make this a consistent story throughout every aspect of the home and bring these interesting materials in, whether it's on walls or whether it's coming through from an outdoor ceiling in, or whether we just bring it into kind of furniture pieces on the inside. But I love experimenting with materials. I'm a big cast glass, cast metal fan. So I'm always kind of looking at ways of introducing that. And then even I do a lot of product design. So I'm constantly looking at materials for that and kind of innovative ways to use them in new ways.
Oh, that's awesome. That is really, really cool. Earlier you mentioned, just sustainability and comfort within a home where a client may not want to have to worry. So I'd love to just kind of talk about what that means from like a furnishings perspective, upholsteries. What are you seeing that makes that easier? Are we seeing new technologies? Are we seeing, just a more performance-based product lineup that makes these choices a little bit easier than, I remember 20 years ago, Sunbrella was basically your performance option. And now it seems like there's endless options that are very family friendly, pet friendly. What do you see with that? And have there been design constraints, or has that really opened up your ability to procure just the right material for the right space and right situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many incredible options on the market today, like you mentioned. And like I said at the beginning, I feel like people come to us, whether they're coming to us specifically or whether this is just kind of a trend in design, generally speaking, but people want livability. They don't want to feel uptight about kind of keeping their house perfect. And some of that, leans into their tolerance for patina and wear, but then some of it is just, sustainability kind of begins with longevity and creating pieces that are going to stand the test of time and get better with age often. And we've got incredible fabric options now. And I think a little bit is the fight against fast fashion and, furnishings and materials that are just quickly and cheaply made, which is kind of the world we live in today. And so I try to encourage my clients, especially for these pieces that you want to last, something that is handmade and that is solid, might have a bigger price tag today, but it's going to not only last you, sometimes decades, but it also brings in so many artisans and so many craftsmen that, the art of these things are almost getting lost today, which I think is incredibly sad. But you're almost seeing a shift back to that in design today, where people are kind of leaning in more. We kind of have stripped away the details of design over the past decade. And now people are kind of going back toward that artisan, craftsman hand feel, where we're bringing back so many of these details, which I think is wonderful because it's celebrating the artists, the craftsmen who have done this for so long.
I think that's really perfectly stated. And, I've often shared it. It almost mirrors what's happened in the hospitality industry with restaurants. And, we went through kind of like the 90s where it was all, franchises and, Applebee's. And,
right.
And over the last 20 years, there's been this amazing farm to table or ocean to table resurgence. And I draw a lot of comparison to what we're seeing in design today, where it does matter. The story is the material and the people behind it. And I'm really excited to see that. You also mentioned a really neat perspective that I hadn't heard prior to this, and it makes so much sense, is, for a long time, I have personally viewed sustainable as being something that has a life after we use it. You maintain that sustainability is longevity of life. And I think that actually makes so much more sense, especially in building. That's really a great observation. When did you start to incorporate that, and how did you kind of develop that sensibility?
I think it's somewhat innate because, just even as a homeowner myself, I want to be surrounded by beautiful things, but I want them to have intention and I want them to last. And I also, I mentioned before, I've got 3 young kids, so I understand kind of the hustle bustle of life and dogs and people and entertaining. And so I think it's just so important that that we give people, and I think this kind of leans into sometimes the overstimulated social media world that we live in, where we want new and different, and every room has a different personality. But I think I want my homes to feel like that the clients who are living there still love them in 10 years, and that it doesn't feel like we finished it yesterday. And sometimes I think those homes aren't always kind of the flashy Pinterest editorial moment, but it's the homes that you truly want to be in, and that have this kind of sense about them, that they're not screaming at you, but when you're in them, they just feel good, and they have a sense of humanity as part of them. And that's, so much of the passion that I get from my career is, trying to kind of understand my clients and understand their version of beauty, and like, how can I really increase the quality of their life by bringing them into a beautiful home that embraces their family, that embraces their friends, and kind of gives them that long term.
Well, I again, speaking firsthand, I've seen your work, and it's incredibly inviting and soothing. Like it is just cohesive would be the absolute definition of what you do. I also notice with your palette is distinctive in the work that I've seen, and it focuses. From my perspective, there is a warmth, and that is kind of a thread through all of the materials. Obviously, you can't do that with materials that are just on trend or in trend right now. So how do you pull that commonality and that thread through plaster, stone, wood, and furnishings? Like, just walk us through maybe a little bit of what that process looks like.
Sure. I would say we start every project with first of all, we start every project with a lot of listening. And, every homeowner is going on their own journey of what is the language of this home. A lot of times we get started on a project early with the architect. So we're listening to a lot of the architectural conversations too. What is the language of the architecture? And a lot of times it's a journey. So we kind of sit back and let that progress. We kind of start to dabble in a few things, but let's come up with the language. Once we start to understand what is this house trying to say, we come up with a set of rules. And we call that our global finishes, for example. And so we try to come up with what are the rules of this home? How are the windows treated? What's the baseboard? What's the crown? Do we have crown? Do we have interesting carved plaster moments? And then once we've established the rules, then we go through and decide how we're going to break the rules and how we're going to give this house some personality so that every room doesn't feel the same, but that we do have a thread that weaves its way through the project and creates connection. And so there's room in every home for some fun, for some personality. Clients are coming to us educated, and they're coming to us inspired, thanks to social media, thanks to Pinterest, which I love. And that kind of goes back to the listening. Okay, what rooms do you love? And we try to kind of put them at ease and be like, you don't have to have fancy design language behind what you love. Just show us things that make you excited. So that's kind of how we start the process of coming up with the language. And then those kind of more outlier photographs or inspiration materials, let's say, that they want to use, we try to find moments of surprise and delight throughout the home that you discover as you're journeying through the house, and that kind of give that kind of zest and that personality and that surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Love it. What, another just component that you use where, light is such a big part of projects. And when you're considering the materiality and the story and the narrative of the home, where does that fit in? Is it top of mind? Is it something you're weaving through, or is it almost where you start?
I mean, I think natural light is the greatest luxury you can give yourself in any room. And I would say that is a conversation early on, because so much of that is in the hands of the architect.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond that, we're always kind of early on in the process, we're looking for ways to give more of that, with the architect, whether that's changing a window into a bay window so that you're sitting inside the natural light. And, creating indoor-outdoor feel and connection is so important to me. So once we've kind of established the exterior envelope, then it's a matter of controlling the light and filtering the light and having interesting moments of ambiance. And that, I would say, controlling natural light is one of the biggest shifts in interior design over the last 5 years. We are doing so much work on the front end to coordinate motorized shades and integrate them into the architecture, concealed pockets, wiring, Roman shades. There is so much work on the front end for that to feel effortless on the back end. And it's so important in, making sure that is done correctly, and not because, I could get into this for a lot longer, but there's not a lot of budget risk to wire for the dream early and then decide what you want to do later. But anyway, that is really important. And then kind of creating zones of ambiance through layered lighting is also incredibly important, to have those moments of layering where you're not just relying on can lights to light a room, but you've got really the smallest can lights possible to make sure the room's lit. You've got sconces, you've got task lighting, you've got kind of that layering. And in so many homes today, that's all on automated systems that create those moments for people as the day goes on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're so right. Like the wiring's the easy part. If done at the correct moment in time, it becomes the hard part. Yeah, it becomes the hard part really, really quick. So just a quick question before I get to my next one. What is your personal favorite time of day to see one of your homes? If you had to pick, is it morning? Is it evening? Is it the heart of the day? When do you love seeing a home?
I love golden hour, kind of just as the sun is setting. Often we always do like these big dramatic installs where we're coming with a team of 30 and we're installing a house, in 3 to 5 days time. And so often we're working all the way up to the reveal to the client, which can most of the time mean we're revealing right at that hour, which is so magical. And I just love kind of that warm light that fills a home.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love it. So we've talked about what makes a home cohesive. Just, in general, where do you see that get off the tracks? Where are the danger spots to lose cohesiveness and move somewhere else?
I think the danger spots come with these kind of polarizing trend moments that we're seeing kind of sweeping across social media and Pinterest. It's when people want each room to be a totally different house. That can really make a house feel disjointed. It might be great for photography, but when you're really experiencing a home, you need to have a language that pulls you through the home, that establishes hierarchy into different rooms, different entryways. And, so restraint can be one of the most important aspects of design.
Less is more. So Marie, when you mentioned establishing a set of kind of global rules for a home, and that being the result of listening to kind of the client's dream. What sort of questions are you asking to pull that information out of people? Because it's real easy to point at a picture, and of course, inspiration, as you shared, that can be very, very helpful. But how do you get into really the nitty gritty, and especially even with the sense of, let's say it is a second home, that seems like it would be a different set of questions than like a primary residence. And I may be wrong there, but what are you doing to, really pull that information out to establish the guidelines for how we're going to navigate the design and kind of the architectural details of the home?
I would say a lot of different ways. And a lot of it, again, kind of goes back to just absorbing what the client's putting out and kind of asking questions about, well, okay, you like this picture. What do you like about it? Mm-hmm. And seeing trends in pictures, and also listening to the architect and talking with the architect. The other day we're working on a job here in Houston where I just, had a sidebar with the architect to be like, here's what I'm thinking. Are you feeling this? And he gives feedback. Oh, well, we had a conversation early on that they love trim work. And so let's not curve the windows here, whatever it is. But it's a lot of like checks and balances and making sure that the client is responding as you go with some of the design decisions you're making. So it's not a perfect formula, and sometimes it evolves. But establishing those kind of early on rules is important. They can change down the road.
Sure.
But it's what's establishing that kind of consistency, throughout the home.
How much education does it take for you to provide a client with, examples of, you're essentially an interpreter and a translator, right? So you can hear the vision, you can bring it to ideation, and then you can translate it to somebody that can do the implementation. How much education does it take to share the vision so that somebody has the correct expectation when they don't necessarily speak the language of design and construction?
Yeah, every single client who comes to us is so different. Some are very design savvy and some don't want to be bothered with it. Mm-hmm. So it's testing early, seeing that they like the direction early, and then running with it. And, we do a lot of 3D renderings to show our clients, here's these 5 rooms. How are you feeling about it? Do you like this direction? And, it kind of going back to a lot of my philosophy in design is this isn't Marie's world, stamped on your house. It's trying to find what is in their mind or what isn't, or what they respond to, and what is their version of beauty. And to me, that makes our life so much more exciting, because if I just did what I wanted to do every house, you'd start to see kind of repetitiveness in design. And you see that in the design world. Mm-hmm. But I like to say each client allows us the opportunity to become a new designer. And if you kind of take that approach of listening and allowing the clients to steer, even if they don't have, astute design language around it, they know and they can respond to what they find beautiful. And I think that's a lot of fun. And, you don't always get it right the first time, and that's okay. And being open to that journey is what allows you to have a really strong relationship with somebody.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many times where you've become an expert at reading body language and can say, I took a cue that there was something here that you didn't love, or, well, we're done with this because this was exuberance. They didn't have to say anything.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for designers, is like, learn to put people at ease at telling you no, and don't be personally offended by it, because I can't tell you how long I've designed. I mean, design is subjective, and being open to you have a great idea, but it's just not a great idea for this house. Yeah, and you'll find another client along the way. And, we're in 3 weeks installing you mentioned second homes. We're installing a second home for a longtime client. It's actually a third home that we've worked with them on. And, clients that come back to you with second, third, fourth homes, a lot of times I love giving them different worlds to live in. This client, we installed this beautiful house in Jackson Hole that has we did it with Jeff Duncan, who's incredibly talented. And it has a very, rustic, beautiful, of the earth feel. And then this home in Houston we did with Curtis and Wyndham, also incredibly talented, who has a very formal, classical trim work and molding everywhere. So the homes are equally as beautiful, but they are two different worlds. And so it's fun to kind of create a completely different moment for the same family.
I want to be in that family. That sounds like a great. That seems like a great two great worlds to live in. So earlier you mentioned how you love working with craftspeople and people that are prolonging the kind of the art of making. What is your interpretation of how do we preserve the culture of making and keep people engaged? I've shared, and recently in COVID, the hospitality industry lost a generation of hospitality workers due to COVID. And, they're starting to recover. But in 2008 to 2012, the construction industry lost a generation of makers and of craftspeople. And it took us a long time. We're still not anywhere near recovered. But, you saw people in that time period that had to go do something else. And now we have this renaissance of material and craft. And to your point, there's a shortage of it. How do we get that back as an industry? What do we do to help foster excellence in craft?
I love that you called it a renaissance, because I think we're on the cusp of a huge renaissance with this type of thing. Honestly, I think the surge of AI is going to just push us into that even more, because there's so much beauty in these artisans and craftsmen. And I think people are hungry for that touch of humanity, especially as we go more and more into this tech world. How we preserve it, I think, one thing I like to do is take clients to these shops. I know it's a small thing that I do with my clients, but it makes a big difference to go and see these things being made by hand, to touch and feel the difference of material, something done on a CNC versus something hand carved, and understand that difference. It's hard to show them a picture online and be like, I promise it's so much better. And so and I'm always blown away, because, we're in these shops and these warehouses every day. So it kind of becomes normal, but I'm always delighted to see people's responses. Like when I take them to my upholsterer, and they're always kind of fascinated by seeing this actually done by hand, and the assembly and the kind of the whole production of it is delightful, and it's incredible to watch. A step beyond that, I'm actually having my own children go shadow these people to see.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we have an incredible metalworking shop in town who, there's such a need in our industry for that. He does everything from showers to, bookshelves in metal to our furniture pieces to making a desk. And, I had my son go shadow him, because I just think we're going to see this huge rise in need. I mean, we already have the need, but this kind of desire for this touch by the maker's hand product.
Yeah, the authenticity that it brings is, it is distinguishable. You can see it, and you don't have to be an expert, but you can see it and you can feel it. And, there's a perfection to making and just unleashing somebody and being able to, for the lack of a better term, be able to leverage their ideas. Makers, I believe, when they're involved in a project, what makes it extra special is it amplifies your ability as opposed to simply a product. Like, it truly brings personality to any space, and it is one of a kind. And it is so distinguishable when you see that. And I would encourage you, the College of Building Sciences in downtown Charleston. The next time you have a trip out to Kiowa, I would highly recommend. We had them as a podcast guest. I don't know, 2 or 3 seasons ago. But they actually are the only college in the U.S. that is offering 4-year degrees in the building sciences, and specifically trim carpentry, timber framing, plaster, ironwork. And you see all of these young artisans receiving a Bachelor of Science in the building arts. And it sounds like it would be something great for your son to visit as well, because we have on our team a young man who is our design and fabrication manager in Charleston, who was one of the first graduating classes there, and he's has a 4-year degree in timber framing. And to see him light up on anything that is complex, that's the cool thing. Is we're coming out of an era where it was all about easy and fast and cheap, and he just lights up when there's a problem to solve. I have our VP, same thing, former maker, still very much a maker, but he lights up when there's a problem to solve. And that really is what building is all about, right? I mean, that's the history of building throughout all of time. These projects were hard. It's really encouraging to see this generation step into that, and people like you that are bringing it to market and providing really the jobs and careers that are going to be required for these makers to succeed in being business owners, and preserving something that makes the spaces just really outstanding.
Yeah, and I think that type of work brings so much joy to so many, just in the nature of work. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of exiting an era of you got to go get the 9 to 5 behind the computer, and hopefully into an era that is a little bit more into these types of roles where, people just find so much joy in kind of the making and the problem solving and the doing with your hands.
Yeah, no, it's really, really refreshing. Okay, so kind of the final topic, and this season is called The Long Game. So I want to understand, and we've covered some of this, but probably not from the specific perspective, but how do you protect your point of view in an industry that is just moving at light speed and constantly evolving? Share with us how you kind of protect that and, I guess, grow it.
Lots to unpack with that one. I would say staying rooted to your principles. Good design doesn't change. Good design principles, good scale, good proportion. Human scale hasn't changed. The fast fashion trends of today change all the time. We're seeing them kind of polarized on social media, and I think that's where you just can't be reactive. It's fun, and I encourage adding that some into your home, but there's ways to do it that isn't so permanent and isn't so, it's a wallpaper that's easy to change out. It's a fabric that you can change later, but it's not the kind of integral bones of the house. I have a team of 18 women. So these projects are not just the brainchild of me. And so one way I stay fresh and stay innovative is, I've got incredibly talented designers around me. And at MFI, part of my role in my career at this moment is mentoring young designers and kind of coming to the table and never making your team feel like you're the only one with the best idea. Anyone at the table can have the best idea. And welcoming that and encouraging that is what creates a lot of synergy on a team. And not having people not afraid to be wrong, to give a suggestion. And that kind of creates so much innovation and so much talent. And, we have a lot of fun working that way. And so we're kind of always reinventing ourselves, but staying true to the design principles and an aesthetic of true beauty and not just trying to create the next magazine cover. Trying to really create beautiful homes for people has rules that stay consistent.
I love that. That is pitch perfect. So fine. And I do want to ask one follow up on that though. And it's not a big question, but your firm's approximately 20 years old. Did you, when you started, I mean, are you walking out the vision, or did you pass the vision 15 years ago? I mean, you've got a big team, you're working nationally, you're published. Where are you in relation to what you thought it would be like 20 years ago?
When you're first starting out, there's so much grit and there's so much work to be done. But, we take a team retreat at the end of every summer where we kind of, we're so busy and we're so kind of grinding that we take a moment to remember why we're doing this and our meaning behind it. And, I'm really proud, as we're going on to like our 18th annual retreat.
Wow. That
our core mission has remained the same. And that's kind of grounded in bringing beauty into our clients' homes. And, there's obviously kind of more detail to that, but I think that has kind of rang true, throughout the 20 years. And I think it's important to kind of pass that along to your teammates and kind of make sure the vision of what you're trying to do, not just as a designer, make your mark on the world, whatever that is, but to serve people.
Yeah.
And I think finding a way, for the young people out there who are wanting to make their mark in the world, the best advice I could give you is find a way to serve another person. Yeah. And the more you can give other people what they want, the more you're going to get what you want.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth of life. And if you find a niche to serve better than anyone else and to do it well and to do it with precision and honesty and integrity, you're going to be successful as long as you can kind of manage the ups and downs of entrepreneurship.
Yes. And those are a plenty. Well, that's a beautiful answer, and it's a philosophy we agree with. And, it's easy to forget, but we exist for one reason, and that is to serve our client. Period. Without that, we cease to exist. So that has to be the North Star for where we begin. And I think you just shared that absolutely beautifully. Well, this has been a great conversation and kind of a peek into how you operate. I'm a big fan. So, but now it is time for our rapid fire section. So, what is one skill you would love to learn?
Gardening. I love all things landscape design and gardening, but I am not much of a green thumb and don't have a lot of time to become one, but that's my retirement plan.
Oh, that's a great answer. So far, we've had piano, language, guitar was one a few days ago, but gardening's not one. So that's excellent. I love that. And
so when I'm in meetings with landscape designers, I'm like taking notes like crazy because I love to hear about different parts of the country, what grows, what doesn't, what animals eat. I have big visions of a Martha Stewart garden one day.
Yeah, well, I have a friend, and we have a really beautiful, personally, a potager garden that we have learned to love over the last several years. My wife and I, and our children, and I'll tell you, the garden is the new Whole Foods. I think that it kind of goes hand in hand with the conversation we just had. It is, it is a different way of eating healthy. Now, you end up spending, $400 for 3 pounds of carrots, but it's still fun, and it provides a huge escape. So that's great. Yeah. Okay, next question. The most underrated skill in construction.
Communication and listening.
That is a good one. That is a good one.
I mean, I think note taking. I mean, as simple as that is, note taking. It is my biggest pet peeve to go on a 4-hour-long site visit and no one's taking notes but our team. I mean, it's just because you end up wasting everybody's time. And you've got to be able to communicate everyone has to be able to communicate to their own teams, not just rely on one team to do all the communicating. Because then you have the same conversation 1 million times, and it wastes the client's money, the construction time, and all the above.
And it becomes emotionally frustrating. One of the best developments of technology I have seen lately is I have several of my project managers that wear these little note takers, and they get a full transcript and breakdown of any meeting they have, and they're able to store it in our CRM and send it as a recap. And I'm like, that you didn't even have to do anything, and everybody is served better. Voila. Yeah. So, exactly. Okay. Final question. One word that defines good leadership.
Integrity.
Yeah, that nails it. Well, I just want to thank you. I'm so grateful that you spent time with us today, and our listeners are going to love this episode. And just very, very appreciated. And we'll look forward to hopefully coming to Houston, or you being in Nashville at some point, or us crossing paths and doing this in person. But very, very grateful for the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Wonderful. Well, there's a quiet confidence in Marie's work that I think says a lot about where design is heading. Not towards more, towards better materials, better craftsmanship, better collaboration. Homes that feel calm enough to live in and strong enough to grow with people inside of them. That's what the long game is really about, creating spaces that don't just impress for a moment, but continue revealing themselves over time. To our listeners, if today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to follow Marie Flanigan and explore her incredible body of work. You can find links in the show notes. Next week on Couture Construction, we continue season 12 with a conversation about preservation, adaptation, and the emotional weight of renovation. We'll be joined by Jim Walker of Copper Sky Renovations. Thanks for listening. This episode was produced by Cast Collective and Chelsea Rand. Until next time, keep cultivating creativity.